Okay, I think I'm on now. Welcome to Asgard Tactical Solutions' first episode of TAC Chat. I am your host, Dan. I am the Anarchist cop, and I'll be right back here in a second. All right, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and just jump right into this presentation. And I'm going to start this presentation off with Occam's razor. And it's a preference for simplicity to defend the idea of divine miracles. The simplest solution is most likely the right solution. So following the same line of thinking, it's often said the simplest explanation is often the truth. The more complicated, complex, or contradictory any belief system or story or narrative is, the further away from the truth it's moving. 99.99% of the time, the truth is simple. And that's not to say details don't matter in any given thing. They do. But as you move into a bigger picture of things, the truth is just simple. So what I want to get into here is the truth is rarely complicated, if ever. The fastest way to get from point A to point B is always a straight line, which is the most simplistic trait of truth. I mean, it speaks for itself. Point A to point B is the fastest way to get from here to there. If I have to ask or reframe a question a bunch of times, more than likely you're lying. If I get confused over a belief system continually, because there's all these contradicting principles within a belief system, that means it's really the law of polarity. It's the Hermetic law of polarity, what we're dealing with. It's really the same thing, just to different degrees. I'm going to get into that. We're going to talk about the Hermetic law of polarity today. I think with a name like the Anarchist cop, that's kind of a good idea because it is kind of a paradox, just the very statement. The three C's: complex, confusing, or conflicting. You know, as I stated, the more complex, confusing, or conflicting any story or narrative or belief system is, the further away from truth you're actually getting. So the more often that the three C's are present in any narrative, belief system, or story, that the further away from the truth we are. This is where the phrase "a web of lies" comes from. Having to rephrase or reframe a question more than once, more likely than not, points to deception, dark psychology, emotional manipulation, and even mind control. At this point, the communication becomes more of an interrogation than actual open communication. And it speaks for itself. If I'm interrogating somebody, if you have to interrogate somebody to get the information, you're not getting truth. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to interrogate them. And I've been on the other end of PSYOPs. I know what they are. I've been on the other end of them. I've been through a few things. I'm going to talk about the nuts and bolts of different things in this program. I'm going to talk about the nuts and bolts of surveillance and counter-surveillance, the nuts and bolts of an investigation. It doesn't matter if it's a low-level private investigator or the CIA. The nuts and bolts of all those things are the same. So when we get to truth and you're given new information that you're looking at and you realize, wow, this is true, you can either admit it's true, or if your ego is too, sometimes our egos are too invested in a narrative that we either paint in our own minds, in an overlay that we paint in our own minds, or an overlay we put on another person. And it could be a relationship, it can be a religion or a belief system, it could be anything. And when we're presented with information that is contrary to what we've believed for a long time, we've got two choices. We can either accept the truth, or we go into what's called cognizant dissonance. And cognizant dissonance, it's defined as the mental discomfort, because that's what it is, of psychological stress experienced by a person who holds two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values. This discomfort is triggered by a situation in which the person's belief clashes with new evidence perceived by the person. And it's ugly and distressing, especially when you see it happening, and I wrote that down there, I don't even have to look at it, when you see it happening up close on a personal level. Okay, under Hermetic principles, also, the universe is fractal. So we'll talk about that also in later shows. Whenever cognizant dissonance is present, more than likely you're dealing with somebody who doesn't want to believe something because there's another psychological problem present. And I've experienced this also, and it's Stockholm Syndrome. And that is defined as a condition in which causes a hostage to develop a psychological alliance with their captors during captivity. These alliances result from a bond formed between the captor and the captives during intimate time spent together, but they are generally considered irrational in light of the danger or risk endured by the victims when the hostage feels that the kidnapper did them a favor by not killing them. I grew up in I had a pretty rough childhood. I'm going to be putting some things in my book about it. And I'm not saying this because I want any kind of, you know, fucking sympathy. And if I accidentally, use a cuss word here and there, please forgive me. I'm going to try to speak as naturally as I can. I've given presentations in front of, lawyers and doctors, and I can drop $5 words. In fact, I probably will. But I want to talk in a manner where everyone could understand, and I just sometimes use profanity. And I don't mean to, and I'm working on it. It's something I'm definitely, working on. But I've experienced this firsthand, and I've seen abused women and abused children, very ugly and it's irrational, but they stick up for their abuser. This is complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense for this to happen. But when you see it happen, there's a reason. Their minds have been broken. So if we can, we got to try to help bring those types of people back, is what we've got to do. We're not better than them because it could happen to any of us. I'd be the first one to tell you, if it happens to you, welcome to humanity. You know? And this is why. Ego gone rogue. Our egos form at a very early age, and they are, the ego is not a bad thing, first off. We need to have some type of healthy ego. Egos help us set boundaries. And from a self-defense perspective, you can't always interpret someone's intention if you don't set a boundary. So egos help us set boundaries. And it's when that boundary is crossed that we can then know what their intentions are. And that's something that's articulable if you have to physically defend yourself. And I'm going to get into a lot of that kind of stuff on this page also. I've been in the martial arts my whole life. I'm legit. I'm not Bruce Lee or anything. I don't think I am. But a big part of what I'm doing as a martial artist is self-protection, which encompasses more than just self-defense. And as I'm getting older, there's something else to think about too. And I realized this when I died, our bodies are going to fail us. It doesn't matter how tough we think we are or what's going to happen. Our bodies are going to eventually fail us, and it's our spirit, our soul, and our mental state. It's especially our soul that's going to matter in the end. Because physically, it doesn't matter what you can do now, your body will fail you. I'm 48, it's failing me. I mean, I'm healthy. Don't get me wrong, but I can see, we're all headed for the same place. So spiritually, the type of spiritual currency we get is what's important. Our egos want to protect us, like I said. Our egos are steeped in avoiding shame. Okay, so guilt and shame are two different things. I'm going to do a whole episode on that. This episode's sort of an overview of what I want to cover, this first episode. And when you feel guilt, you did something wrong, but you can atone for it. When you feel shame, you feel like you are something wrong. And every single suicide that I've ever seen involved shame. And it's terrible. What I don't like is the weaponization of shame. Shame is at the lowest possible level you can be at on Maslow's hierarchy pyramid. I should have put a slide in here about that. I'll get into that. But it's low. Shame, you have to work through it. And the ego wants to avoid shame. And paradoxically, it wants to protect you from the shame, and it wants to avoid shame. And it'll cause you to do things to avoid it. Yet the shame itself will kill you. And the only way through shame is truth. So that's why this first episode is about truth. So moving forward, we're going to talk, real quick about teachability. You have to have an open mind. You have to be able to take in new information, and you don't have to accept it. You don't have to accept it. But what I'm asking is not to outright reject this, because what I'm going to talk about today about natural law is simple. It really is. It's simple. That's why I'm starting this off with truth, because this is true. And it's found in every single religion, and when I use the word religion at this point in the presentation, it's what's commonly thought of as religion. So it's found in every religion. Natural law is in every religion. It's just not followed in every religion, which is why religion is bad. We're going to get into that. So an individual's teachability, or their ability to learn by way of being taught by someone else, is extremely dependent upon the open-mindedness or closed-mindedness of the individual being taught. Low teachability derives from the arrogance and rigid skepticism, but it also comes from naivete and gullibility. High teachability derives from a balance between healthy skepticism and open-mindedness, willingness to learn and change. So in Hermetic principles, there's a principle of gender. And when I say gender, I'm not talking about sex, and I'm not talking about actual man and woman. What I'm talking about is the feminine principle, the male, female, feminine, masculine principle found in gender in all things. So in order to come to a decision, you have to use the feminine principle of intuition. If you ignore your intuition, you're usually going to wish you hadn't. And I got a whole story on that too. But you also want to have some type of linear problem solving and skepticism. That's the male gender, the masculine gender side of things. And it's a combination of both these things that you have to use to arrive at a hypothesis of your own that is truth and not your truth. You want to get to the truth, okay? Because your truth is just an opinion. And I'm going to have opinions on here. When I have an opinion, I'm going to tell you it's my opinion. But if it's the truth, if it's objectable, and if it's immutable and it's the truth, it's not going to feel good, because we don't like absolutes. Our egos don't like absolutes. We always want a way out. And that's one of the reasons why politicians are bullshit. You can't never nail them down to one thing. They don't understand the fact that you're allowed to change your mind when given new information. In fact, you should change your mind if you're given new information. And they don't want to do that because they don't want to be seen as hypocrites. And nobody does. But that's part of the problem. So you have to have an open-mindedness to it. And part of the learning process also deals with demands on adult time. I was going to go into andriogagy, which is a study of adult learning, but I don't like the Greek interpretation of it, to lead man or be a man leader, because as far as anarchy is concerned, there's no leaders, there's no followers. And so I didn't really like andriogagy's entire thing. But what it boils down to is demands on an adult's time versus a kid's time. And, you know, we live in this society right now where we're busy. Part of the whole mindful movement, or part of the New Age spiritual community movement, is mindfulness, right? It's to get yourself focused in the moment so you're not constantly addicted to that next thing you got to do. Okay, so like right now, this is my first time doing a presentation, or second time, but this is my first time doing a presentation in this manner. And although I've done public speaking, I feel nervous. I'm going to admit it, but I'm going to go through that, because none of us grow, and I know this, none of us grow in the comfort zones. We have to step outside our comfort zones. So it demands on an adult's time. Well, I want you to think about this in terms of later on when I start talking about religion. I start talking about a book by Michael Tillinger called Slave Species of God. And I want to start talking about some other things that, you know, in the Sumerian tablets, and some things that are going to definitely challenge your beliefs if you're a real dogmatic religious person, a Christian, or any other of the Abrahamic monotheistic religions. And nothing against those religions. I know people in them who follow natural law, and they're going to their God's heaven. They're going to wherever it is they think they go. Or we're going to find out maybe they're not. Maybe we're all wrong. You know, back in thousands of years ago, when these things were being put down, we didn't have CCTV. We can't prove certain things. So if you're going too much on intuition and too much on belief, that's naivete. So this is a combination of both, because natural law it's science. And by the time we get to the end of this presentation, I'm hoping you can see that, or at least begin to see that. I don't expect you to take all this in at one time, but I want you to think of demands on an adult's time. Well, the Sumerian tablets were written in stone thousands of years ago. Thousands of years ago. And they used a hammer. You know, they used a hammer and a chisel. Okay. Well, think about how easy it is to type, right? Think about how easy it is to write. They were chiseling. Okay. We don't want to waste our time with anything nowadays. We don't have no patience. We're living in the age of instant gratification, but we're still busy. We can drive through a McDonald's and get something this big, this round, that's 1,000-calorie meal. Do you know what our ancestors had to do? How much work they had to do to get 1,000-calorie meal? I mean, it's mind-numbing. They were busy. We're not busy. So the very fact that someone took the time to record these things, and the very fact that you see these things over and over and over again throughout all of man's religions, tells me man's onto something. There is intelligent design. There's something bigger in this universe than us. And I'm telling you, I've seen it myself. And I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into why I know God exists and why I started, keeping records and keeping information, taking pictures and videos, because I seen what was happening. I knew it was something metaphysical. I knew it was something supernatural. And it's a destructive process. The ego, again, did not want to let me surrender. I still have issues with it, but I know what I seen was real, and I wanted to have some kind of evidence. I wanted to start journaling some things, so I did. So I journaled, I took pictures, and I'm going to put all these stuff up. I'm going to put all this stuff up, and I'm going to explain it. Hopefully I explain it in a book better than I am on here. But the demands on our time, that we don't have the demands we need. And in order to learn, an adult there needs to be a reason for an adult to learn. We're not like kids. We're not just taking everything in because it's amazing to us, it's new. We're mission and problem solving orientated. So in order for us to take the time to learn something, it's got to be something we're really interested in, or something that's going to help us or have some immediate benefit to us. And you may not understand this now, but natural law will have an immediate benefit on your life, and it'll have a benefit on the world. That's the big thing, because what we do in our personal lives on the microcosm scale affects the macrocosm scale, or if we're talking about tarot, the minor arcana or the major arcana. And I'm going to get into all that because all that was part of the awakening I had. So I started researching. So part of this is you have to want to learn this. You really want to have to. You're going to have to do more research on it. And I'm going to point you to people who know way more than me. Okay, I'm just getting into this. I'm going to point you to people who know a lot more than I do. And books and everything else. I'm putting this information out there. This is part of sharing. This is what this is. Let's go on to the next thing here. So this is John Paul Jones. He was the father of the United States American Navy back during the Revolutionary War. And yeah, they formed well, I'll get into that, but if fear is cultivated, it will become stronger. If faith is cultivated, it will achieve mastery. So in the New Age community, they have this saying, what you resist persists. And I think that's kind of an inaccurate statement. I believe if you concentrate or focus on something, it's what's going to manifest into your reality. And if you focus on fear, more things to be fearful about are going to manifest into your reality. If you focus on faith or have faith that good things are coming to you, good things will come to you. But don't just concentrate on just you. You got to, the biggest part of humanity is serving others, be a service to others. Now, John Paul Jones was, the father of the United States Navy. So, it was a voluntary force back then. It was really it was like an anarchist force. They were fighting for freedom. They fought for our freedom. That's what the Declaration of Independence is. America is still the light of the world. We're still the most awake country in the world, which is something else, because I don't think we're awake at all, and this isn't a competition to see who's more awake than others or whatever. It isn't nothing like that. But when you do awaken, you'll see your bullshit and you'll see everyone else's, and then you're going to have some issues because you'll call it on yourself, and if you call it on yourself, you'll call it on anyone else. So try to have some tact. I've kind of messed up a few times, but this speaks for itself. Don't focus on your fear, and that's not to say never be afraid. I've been scared a lot. I've been scared so much that I'm used to fighting through the fear. I'm used to fighting through the fear. And I did something just a couple months ago I was very fearful about, but I had to step outside my comfort zone. So, and I'll get into that on, episode 2. But here, moving forward, I would ask of anyone watching this to resist the urge or temptation to outright dismiss the information I am going to share today in this small presentation. This presentation is meant to be an overview of the kind of information I feel morally obligated to share now that I have a better understanding of it. Outside of personal experiences I had during what I would call a hard to accept spiritual awakening, nothing I will ever present on this show is brand new. As the old saying goes, there's nothing new under the sun. My awakening led me to seek enlightenment, which led to the study and research that resulted in a better understanding of natural law and Hermetic principles. Most of what I will cover here today, will have an entire episode dedicated to them individually. So a few things I'm going to cover here today. There's a whole episodes that are going to be dedicated to just those topics, because there's no way to cover all the stuff. Let's see. Yeah, Hermetic principles. All Hermeticists were alchemists. Hermeticists had a good understanding of natural law. And with that, and it's simple. It's so simple, everyone should understand it. Everyone's experienced it. Everyone knows it as karma. But everyone needs to understand what natural law is, or universal truth, as it's been called. So real quick, we're going to go over the 7 Hermetic principles. This is going to be fast. So anyone who's looking for something in depth, this is not the in-depth thing to watch. But the 7 Hermetic principles and natural law. These 7 principles are axioms that are considered universal laws. This school of thinking goes back thousands of years to the past. Hermetic means secret, esoteric, or occult. It refers to, I can't move this. It refers to knowledge that is in correspondence to the conduct in the universe. People hear that word occult and they automatically get the EBGBs. They think, and I used to too. Oh, the cult, that's evil. That's devil worship. That's not what occult means. The 7 Hermetic principles. Hermetic means secret, esoteric, or occult. It refers to knowledge that is in correspondence with the conduct of the universe, or in other words, all sentient beings within the universe. In everyday setting, these principles can help you come to terms with some of the fundamental aspects of the world and apply them in your everyday life. These principles are said to appear in your life when the time is right and you're ready to receive their teachings. There are 7 principles in total, which are all interconnected with each other. They are all interconnected with each other. And it's kind of funny because these principles didn't come into my life to March of this past year. And I'd already been studying. I'd already been on sort of a mini sabbatical journey, so to speak, to study different religions. And I got into the real, all the teachings that are in the New Age community and all that woo-woo stuff. And I was studying all that, and some of it's good, but some of it didn't really align with me. And then I came across this, and it's kind of funny how natural law works. It's kind of funny how synchronicities will work, because the Iliad and the Odyssey just kept popping up in my peripheral since like about 2015, and more to the point, the Odyssey. And King Odysseus, his journey back to his wife, 10-year journey after the Trojan War. So he was gone for 20 years. And that's a long time, especially, they might have only lived to be 50 or 60 back then at that point in time. And 20 years, 10 years, and it's the moral content of the story on being faithful, but also fighting and giving into temptations. The moral aspect of that, and how he got back to his wife and finally got back to her. There was a reason that I was brought to that, and he was a very human hero in that tale. So I was not even studying anything religious or spiritual at this point. I decided to start reading on that, and then I came across Hermetic principles, and then that opened up a whole new thing for me with Hermetic principles and natural law. I read the Kabbalion, and it made sense because I had experienced it. I didn't know what to call it, but I had experienced it. And it's really funny when I think about it, because I was like, I said to myself, I've experienced the negative and positive effects of natural law. And then the more and more I got to understand natural law, I realized there is no negative or positive about natural law. It just is. It's just responding to my behavior, my conduct, my actions. And, whether I think it's negative or positive is subjective to me. But if you want to have better outcomes in your life, you have to have some type of pattern recognition with what's going on with regard to your conduct, your behavior, and what's happening in your life, or what I would call, if you're not doing the right thing and you're getting that mirrored back at you from the universe. And I will say universe from time to time, but most of the time I am going to refer to God, God with a capital G. You got to take a look at the cosmic culpability that you might have in some bad things happening in your life. Even if you were wronged by somebody, they're wrong. That don't make them right. You know, some of these contradicting principles are found within the Bible also. And I'm not going to, this channel is not about scripture, although I will talk about some scriptures from time to time. This is coming from the study of natural law, and what I know is within it's within this physical manifested reality, 3D reality that we live in, and everything has to bend to it. It's part of when God made the universe, these laws were made. Hermeticists understood natural law, but these laws were around since the beginning of creation. It's like the law of gravity. I can't show you a picture and tell you gravity exists. You know, I can't do that. What I can do is I can take a pen and I can show you gravity's effect, right? So you can see gravity's effect. It's the same way, you know, thermogenics and different things in the universe, the universal laws that govern the universe. Gravity is one of them. Well, natural law is one of them also. And that's why we have all these sayings, you know, you reap what you sow. So you have to sow some better things to reap better things. So these are going to be the 7 Hermetic principles. And I'm going to go through them kind of quick. I don't know what time I'm at. But the first principle is the principle of mentalism. It embodies the idea that everything that happens has to be the result of a mental state that precedes it. So all is mind. Anything that manifests into the physical reality was a thought first. The entire universe was God's thought. And that's what we're in right now. The principle of correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. As the universe, so the soul. The universe is fractal. When I do a bigger presentation on this, I'll show you some pictures that'll you've probably seen, maybe. You know, there's a lot of memes on Facebook. You see a picture of the human eye, and you look at a picture of a nebula. It's the same thing. So it's scientifically proven that even on a subatomic level, what they look like is what larger bodies of things, including the universe, ends up resembling. You know, think of a baby being born, how small of a human that is versus an adult. You know, that's this principle of correspondence. The principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. So you ever hear that term, you know, raise your vibration? You know, the higher the vibration level, the lighter and higher the vibration level, probably the happier you are. And you're putting that out into the universe. That's why they say, you know, raise your vibration. If you got a really low, lower, heavier vibration, slower vibration, you're probably sulking around. You're probably stuck in self-pity. You're probably stuck in an unhealthy circle. You're probably stuck in unhealthy patterns that aren't helping you. And I've been stuck in them before. And I'm going to hopefully help people out on how to get out of them. And you don't have to go to mental health people to do it. You should here and there, but I'm telling you, depending on what circle you're in, I don't trust them a whole lot. I don't trust them a whole lot. I've seen the evil that they can do. So I'll get more into that. But today we're going to concentrate on the principle of polarity, and this will be covered more in depth. But it is true knowledge of the nature of opposites is what polarity is. And you've probably heard, and I'm going to probably date myself here, but if I used to watch the Super Friends when I was a kid, right, the Justice League, and the old cartoons, and Batman was like, you know, he'd always be struggling with everything. If I could only reverse the polarity, and it just means go in a different direction. It's opposites. It's the nature of what true opposites are. The principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. The swing of the pendulum to the left is going to be the same as the swing of the pendulum to the right. We go through cycles in our lives, and you can call them cycles of luck, you can call them cycles of bad luck, but there's going to be cycles where everything's going great, and then we're going to have some curveballs thrown at us. And maybe that's the universe or God's way of helping us grow, you know, which is why I probably continue to sabotage myself at times. I just wanted more growth. Where are we at? The principle of causality. So this is every cause has its effect and every effect has its cause. At my age, I'm 48 years old. Anyone my age learned about cause and effect in school. I mean, it almost speaks for itself. That's how simple it is. And the principle of gender, and I already talked about the principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. And again, this isn't about men and women. This isn't about sex. This is about the principles that the feminine principle and the masculine principle bring to the table to balance each other out. Because if you've got too much of one and not enough of the other, you're not going to be in proper balance. And life is really about balance and moderation. Okay, the principle of polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet, all truths are but half-truths, and paradoxes may be reconciled. All paradoxes may be reconciled. Love and hate, fear and courage, greed and compassion are all but the varying degrees of the same thing. So when you've heard people say, there's a fine line between love and hate, this is important because the next part of the presentation, which is only 8 slides, is going to be dealing with that stuff. And that fine line between love and hate is because they both vibrate on the same level. They're on the same line. They're just to a different degree, vibrating at the same level. That's why, people say the opposite of love is hate, and that's what you've always been taught to believe, but the opposite of love is really fear. Love and hate vibrate at a much higher level. Fear vibrates at a real low level. And the only thing lower than fear is shame. And it's the fear of shame that makes people do the ridiculous things that they do, and by sharp contrast, like I said before, again, we're talking about polarity. By sharp contrast, shame also needs to be dealt with. You need to deal with it and don't let anyone weaponize it against you. That's where I'm at. Okay, so self-protection. Self-protection encompasses a lot more than just physical self-defense, but part of what I'm going to talk about on this channel is going to be physical self-defense. Every other show, I'm probably going to throw some concepts up there, techniques up there. And one of the reasons why I was able to catch on to Hermetic principles pretty quickly is because, in martial arts you have empty hand self-defense, knife and stick, intermittent weapon self-defense, handheld pistols, firearms, rifles. If you can take one concept in every single one of those disciplines across the array of all those disciplines, you become better at all of them because you have this innate understanding. Your mind can actually automatically react when you need to. It's less complicated. It becomes simpler. And that's how we get closer to truth, through simplicity. Physical self-defense, I just talked about that. We're gonna do some stuff with physical self-defense, but it's not the most important self-defense. Mental self-defense, emotional self-defense, and spiritual self-defense. If we don't have the spiritual, emotional, mental part down, the physical part's not going to matter. You can be Hulk Hogan, Mike Tyson, Bruce Lee, all rolled up into one perfect fighting machine, and if you got somebody in your head, mentally and emotionally, in your head, you're going to be spiritually bankrupt. You won't even be thinking about spirit, and you'll be so distracted you're not going to have no environmental or situational awareness to even see an attack coming in the first place, because real self-defense is really just the ability to fight hurt. Real self-defense, you're defending yourself. It's not a sport. You probably didn't see the attack coming, or you had just a little bit of time to see it coming, and then you got to go through the OODA or the OODA loop. Observe, orientate, decide, and act. I'm going to talk about all that kind of stuff on here. This is a TAC chat, so I'm going to definitely connect the dots with all this, because self-protection is important, but it encompasses more than just physical self-defense. You got to have these other things in place, and I realize the most important thing is the spiritual self-defense, and it is at the center of self-protection. Okay, and it's through natural law and through true spirituality within whatever religious practice you're in that you're going to be able to spiritually defend yourself and help others, which is what this is about. Okay, so I put this up here, as above, so below. Anarchist cop. Under the Hermetic principle, polarity, all paradoxes can be reconciled. So quite simply, I'm a recovering order follower. I was a cop for 20 years in different jurisdictions, mostly part-time stuff. During that time, I worked full-time, security at hospitals. I worked at a prison for 5 years, a closed maximum security prison, and I served in the Marine Corps during the first Gulf War. I went into that. I was 19 years old. I didn't get sent over. I was trained in the infantry, and I ended up being at the Naval Academy. And this isn't about me, but I'm giving a little bit of a background right now, real quick. You know, I know there's a lot of people in the anarchist movement that are they're recovering from a lot of different things, and I am a recovering order follower. And I can say I'm not ashamed of my career. I'm not ashamed of what I did or didn't do, really. But I can tell you, I never used excessive force on anybody. I most certainly never had to use deadly force on anybody. And I thank God for that. I really do. Because I don't know if I'd be able to do this right now with how I'm wired. I wouldn't be able to do this, I think, if I had to have done that. I never got put in that situation, thank God. The only 2 people in 20 years I actually even put in prison were fucking sex offenders. And I give 2 shits about them. You know, they were breaking natural law. And the one guy, I wish the system was different. I wish he could have gotten better mental health, or I wish he could have been kept in the system. Maybe even something else done with him, because as soon as he got out, he put an axe through a woman's head, nearly cleaved her head in half, and then he went dropped his axe, bought it, you know, I mean, it was the kind of axe that you buy at a hardware store or something. And he wouldn't drop it, and then the city police, they had to shoot him. He charged him. They had to kill him. And when I think on it, you know, he charged me in the same way, but he didn't have no weapons, and I just reacted, and I didn't have to use anything. I'm just bare hands, and it didn't work out for him. It all happened pretty quickly. But you know, to know you're fighting with somebody that psychotic and that evil, that he can do that to a woman. He was gone. He was done. He was a psychopath. He was a psychopath. And I wish more could have been done about that. But I never used excessive force on anybody, and I wasn't a ticket Nazi. I used to get yelled at all the time for not writing tickets. And then why don't you just write a couple, just so you don't get, they're not, I'm like, man, I can't write a 10-mile-per-hour speeding ticket, because they're going 10 miles over the speed limit, when I know damn well I'm going to get off duty and I'm going to probably drive 25 over the speed limit to get home. So I just couldn't be a hypocrite. And I got more I'll say about being a recovering order follower, but I just wanted to give a quick brief background on that shit. And again, the truth is simple. I'm retired. I was a statist, and I'm now an anarchist. And I'm going to get into what anarchy is in the second episode at Newsom in detail, so people can understand that anarchy is not this evil, wild, no law type of thing. There's no laws to follow. There's natural law. And I work for a firearms, self-defense firearms company from time to time, and there is no hierarchy there. Everyone's there to help people and teach, marksmanship and safety, and it's very important. And there's no talked about hierarchy there. We know who knows more, and we all do our jobs, but everyone wants to be there. There's no hierarchy. It really is a company ran like an anarchy, and it runs beautifully. So I'm seeing this, and I started with them like a year after I retired, and I'm seeing this. So I didn't know what it was, and I'll get more into it the next show, but that's basically the truth of it. Is I was a statist, now I'm an anarchist. I was a police officer, now I'm retired. So this is called hypothesis, or apophatic inquiry. Apophatic inquiry. And this is actually something that in law enforcement or in any investigations you use. You use this to get to the truth, right? So it's affirmation through negation, describing what something is by explaining what it is not. Hypothesis comes from the Greek noun apophasis. I can't even pronounce that. Apophasis. Apophatic inquiry. I've heard of that. I heard of that well before I got to this slide, or well before I seen this slide. And I seen this slide, and I'm using it. I just put it into a different format. I got permission to use these slides, and I'll talk about that because you don't want to steal someone else's material. We do take pride in what we do. You have to. And you need to give credit to where credit's due. And I'm going to do that before this first show's over. So I'm going to explain what I am not. And I'm going to explain what I think the problems of the world are. And this isn't an opinion. This is actually fact. Okay? So this is subjective. This is the truth. The 3 problems of the world: the religion of God, the religious beliefs, what religion is. It's not a good thing. We are killing people for centuries over whose version of what happens after us die is right because of fucking ego. Seriously? It is the epitome of ego. I have to kill you because my version of even within the Christian religions, and I was a Christian, I was a Catholic, I'm not probably not a good one, and I'll get into my beliefs on Christ because I believe in Christ. But religion's bad. The religion of gods is bad. The religion of money, okay, man's currency, is bad. And this other one on the far right, it's on my right. I'm not sure if it's going to be on your right or your left, but you can see that one. That's the religion of politics. Demopublicans, Republicrats, they're all the fucking same. And I was told I was a centralist, a libertarian, and I'm like, man, don't label me. I'm none of those things. What I'm about is common sense truth. Okay, common sense truth. And politically speaking, don't take my guns. I deserve to have guns. I need to have a way to protect myself, not just from humans who are being evil and breaking, natural law. I'm breaking my right as a sentient, sovereign being to be left alone. Guns aren't only for that. Guns are to protect ourselves from the government, from a tyrannical government that throughout history we've seen. They want to take our guns? No. The universe has become a battlefield. When I was younger, I was pro-choice. When presented with new information, you're allowed to change your mind. I'm pro-life now. Unless it's threatening the mother's life, I'm pro-life. And you should be. And those are what would be considered right-wing, right-wing principles or beliefs, okay? No, you know what, right? When you got a father and a daughter laying face down in a fucking river dead because they're trying to get into our country, and you start making all these shit posts about it and talking all this nonsense, that's no better. So I don't align with either political party. You're all bullshit. It's all complete bullshit. So that's my bullshit button. So here I'm gonna get into these, and I might spend a little more time on these. I don't know. I can get through them quick, or I can get through them. Slow. But we're going to talk about the 7 deadly sins, and these are sins that were largely these sins to me are largely man-made sins. They're very contradicting. They're counterintuitive, and they confuse people. And we're going to talk about the 7 deadly sins versus transgression against natural law. So the first sin is pride. And I'm trying to do the best job I can here on this first presentation that I'm putting out. So I am putting a little bit of pride into it. I've seen other people put pride into their work on a very human, emotional level. You want people to be proud of you. From the time we're children, we want our parents to be proud of us, and it works well into our adulthood, trust me. And so pride's not a bad thing when it's in moderation. Okay? Pride's not a bad thing. Although I can say pride before the fall is also true if you have too much pride in something. Okay? Pride to the point of thinking you're really good at something and better at something than you actually are at that point in time. You think you're so good, you're about to have an accident. So pride for me came with a piece of humble pie, cement flavored humble pie. And I had that a couple times and I didn't like it. Pride would be to the bad extreme, the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it's a study done by 2 guys named Dunning and Kruger in 1999 that talked about how some people believe they're actually better at something than they are, or know more than they actually do, and that those who actually do know something and are really good at something end up doubting themselves. And the principle behind that to me is real simple. When you do realize you know a few things, you realize how much you don't know. That's the problem. And you ignorant people walk around who already have all the answers, think they know everything. And again, that's the ego gone rogue. That's the bad part of the ego that people need to check. I had to check it. So that's pride. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing at times. You need it. You need to take pride in what you're doing. So this right here is a contradictory belief as far as what a sin is, or something bad is. Next thing is envy. I've been the victim of envy in a bad way, where people are trying to really, hurt me in some kind of way, usually monetarily. I worked in a hierarchical system where everyone was backstabbing each other for promotions, and I didn't even want one, but people would mess with me because they were afraid I was going to get one, I guess. And I never did. I was low level, and that was fine. But envy in moderate on a moderate level is not a bad thing. I could be envious of someone, like, man, I envy yeah, I envy that you got that nice place. I'm kind of envious. It's all on how you are, man. Or there's that quiet hate, and that quiet envy is really the dangerous envy. The envy you won't admit. If you're admitting you're envious, man, I'm actually kind of envious. It's that simple. Like, I could be envious of somebody's strength. I could be envious of somebody's strong beliefs, and I could want to maybe that will motivate me to better myself. So envy is not necessarily a bad thing, but taken to its extreme and not moderated, it is a bad thing. So again, we're talking about polarity. It could be good or bad depending to what degree. Gluttony is the same thing, and gluttony is probably one of the worst. If you've got some type of eating disorder as an unhealthy coping mechanism or an addiction, it's probably one of the worst ones you could have, because you still have to eat. So gluttony is bad. It's bad for you, and I get it, but it's bad for you because you're taking in too much of something you actually need to be in with. So again, we're talking about two opposite ends of the pole. Okay, polarity is definitely at play here. Lust is another big one, and that's the first thing people try to do, is shame you over some kink or shame you over some fetish. Listen, man, I don't care where you hang your hat at the end of the day. I don't care what you and any other adult does. Okay, you can't take lust and make this into some sin, because don't I have to have some type of an attraction to somebody before I have consensual encounter with them? There's 7 billion people on this planet right now. I think that means like 14 billion people got laid. We need to get over the shaming and stuff that goes on with that stuff. But the key words in that phrase is adult and consensual. What two people do at the end of the day is their business, okay? So lust is not a bad thing. It's bad if it's taken to the extreme. If kept in check and done in moderation, it's normal, okay? It's normal. It's needed in order for us to propagate our species. So these are all these 7 deadly sins are very contradictory. And I'm open to someone telling me different, but I've looked at this stuff. And you're not going to tell me anything different if you're cherry picking this or cherry picking that, and not looking at the polarity involved in all of these things. Anger. I just went to a couple months ago a real good presentation called "The Sacred Gift of Anger," put on by Mark Passio, and man, anger is telling you something. And if it is righteous anger, meaning you are right to have it, anger is a good thing if you use it to focus you. After I got divorced 21 years ago, there was a lot of anger. First of all, my heart was broke, right? But then there was a lot of anger, and I focused it. And man, did I better myself afterwards, like big time, in a lot of different ways, because of the anger. And the anger was at myself as well as anyone else. I still care for her, and we have a decent relationship. We talk and stuff here and there, but there was a lot of anger. I improved because of it. So anger is not a bad thing, but if you're constantly one of these people who gets addicted to the adrenaline dump of anger, because the adrenaline dump from anger dumps all these cocktails, it dumps all this cocktail of things into your body, adrenaline and all these other things that you can get addicted to. And it makes you feel righteous to be angry when you're not actually righteous. So you got to be careful with that too. If you're talking about dark resentment anger, you're killing yourself more than you're killing somebody else. It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So it's bad. So again, we're talking about, it's another thing on polarity right there. It's a contradicting principle is what this is. Greed. I think greed is mostly all bad. But the only positive part of greed I can see is for you to want some things, but the very word greed is bad. Greed is bad. And that's pretty much on the dark side of the force as far as I'm concerned, because once you have enough, and I have a little, I'm retired, I'm not making a lot of money, but I feel blessed compared to other people. So I'm going to help out where I can, but I'm not rich, not at all. And my business is not even really a business. Greed is bad. I think all the wars in the world are really fought over greed and ego. and, you know, fighting over resources. There's enough for everybody. And then finally, sloth. Well, that definitely, everyone needs to rest. So you can't, something you have to do once in a while, even on the seventh day, even God rested, you're going to have a slothful day every once in a while. But I think this, when they're referring to the 7 deadly sins here, it can get confusing because everyone's going to have a rest day. Well, sloth, too much being slothful is not good. Again, we're talking about moderation, okay? So you can look at these in different ways, as opposed to the transgressions against natural law, and there they are. And Christians, you're going to recognize these because these are basically all in the 10 Commandments. Don't murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coerce, or lie. It's real simple on what these are. If you've murdered, and all these boil down to one thing, theft. If you've murdered, you've stolen somebody's life that's not yours to take. If you assault them, you steal their physical well-being. If you rape them, you've stolen their right to consent. If you theft, if you steal from them, you've stolen something that's theirs. They're in possession of it, it's theirs. You didn't have a right to take it. If you trespass, you've stolen their peace of mind. That's their property. What are you doing on it? Without their knowledge or permission. Coercion. Every person in this world, myself included, has been coercive at one point. It's called manipulating. But once you start to know better, you need to do better. Coercion is against it is a transgression against natural law. You shouldn't coerce. People should do things freely. And then, of course, there's lying. And if you're lying, you're stealing somebody's, that's why I started this off with what truth is. If you're lying, you're stealing somebody's ability to make an informed decision about whatever it is. So all these are the 7 transgressions against natural law, and it's really simple. I mean, it's so fucking simple. A caveman can do it. It's so simple, you know. Maybe that's why I'm teaching it. It's simple. It's not hard. It's not. I don't understand why more people aren't getting this and getting on board with this and passing this along. We can make the world better if we pay attention to what natural law is. Okay, religion. From the Latin verb relegare, to tie back, to hold back, to thwart from forward progress, to bind. It's a system of control based on unchallenged dogmatic beliefs which holds the progress of human consciousness back. It holds back the progress of human consciousness. This is a good picture of basically what it does. You got the pineal gland is in there someplace. Human consciousness is being held back by religion because religion has, this is what it boils down to. This was a slide I made for this. It all boils down to the historical fact that governments always have and always will use religion, all of them, as a control mechanism for those they govern. Okay, we came to this country to get away from theocracies and to be able to worship however we choose. But they've used, look what they did. Then they used religion to kill a bunch of pagans in the witch hunt, in Salem witch trials. More injustices have been done in the name of religion than anything else in this world, and people are sick of it, and they're moving away from good spiritual practices because they're sick of it. Okay, religion has been an excuse used throughout the centuries to demonize, dehumanize those persons which we disagree with. If they are monsters, then killing them is okay, right? Wrong. And I was saying this back in the early 2000s. There's a reason why we've got this thing going on where it's sort of like a social engineering thing. And we've had it for quite a while. In order to kill somebody, you got to dehumanize them because killing is wrong. We know this innately, that it's wrong. And taking a human life is wrong. And the only time it's right is if you're defending yourself, not because you're having some type of egotistical disagreement. And that gets into the natural right principle of the non-aggression principle. It's the feminine principle of non-aggression. There's the male principle of self-defense, which we're going to talk about more in depth, but it's wrong. So what do? We dehumanize these people. It's what they did to the Vietnamese people, and we've seen movies on it. Yeah, I don't have to tell you about that, but we develop these things in fiction, these inhuman things that are, it's a monster. It's still humanoid, but yeah, we can kill that because it's a monster. It's why we got this fascination with monsters, orcs and zombies and stuff like that. And I was saying this back in the early 2000s. I know it's been said since then, but it's striking to me. It just is. So I'm going to start moving through this a little bit quicker. So spiritual awakening versus enlightenment. And I think everyone's probably seen this meme on Facebook, what a spiritual awakening is like versus what it's actually like, you know, what people think it's like versus what it's actually like. And this pretty much encapsulates it. And when I was going through it, it's a very destructive process. If you stare long enough into the abyss, they say you know the abyss will stare back. I say if you stare long enough into it, you might start looking into a mirror if you're not fucking careful. So, you know, I had my dark night of the soul. I had my dark night of the soul, and this is basically what it is. You think you're going crazy, and this bottom picture of this girl who's, you know, I'm not crazy, leads to you trying to do yoga and meditate and do these other things to get you in the moment and get your head back on right. But a spiritual awakening and enlightenment are two completely different things. They are mutually exclusive, because you can have a spiritual awakening and never get enlightenment. You can be aware of a greater force in this universe other than man and still not seek enlightenment. And there was this really devout Christian that I was talking to, and I'll tell this story, but he was talking, and I was the skeptic, and he was actually said to me that, you know, I'm kind of envious that you've had these signs. I wish I would have these signs. And I you know, it just came to me. I told him at the time, I was like, listen, brother, I'm no expert, but it seems like God already has you. Maybe that's why you haven't gotten these signs. God didn't have me, and that's why this stuff started happening. And I'll explain more. I'll explain more on that in the next episode. But yeah, my spiritual awakening is what led me to this, which is research and study. And I don't think my enlightenment process is ever going to end. You know, you look at that, it takes reading, it takes going to lectures, it takes watching good YouTube videos. Not there's a lot of stuff out there, but hopefully the stuff that, and hopefully this channel, hopefully I can do that here on this channel, is lead you to more knowledge, not just try to say, hey, I'm telling you the exact truth, you don't need to go, you know, anywhere else. No, I'm putting this stuff out there to put out there what I know, to direct you to other people who know more, because the more of us who know this in this world, the better. This isn't a competition. It's not a competition. It's just, I'm in the second half of my adult life. I don't feel like I helped enough people in the first half in the least bit. So this is my way of trying to do something, you know, and there's other things, boots on the ground things that I'm doing and that I will do. And if it takes video camcording something is going to help and bring more attention to it, and more attention to it helps, that's one thing. But as far as just every day helping somebody, I think you shouldn't just do it. You don't have to, everyone should do it. Give $10 to that guy in the corner who's 90% of the time he's not in a good place in life. You know, at least have a good thought about him or something. A lot of people say, oh, they're really rich, and you know, but that's if they are, that's their karma. Natural law will take care of them because they're lying. I know how I feel as an adult. I wouldn't just go stand on a corner unless I really needed to. Now, if you see them dressed in a 3-piece suit or something, maybe they're doing a social experiment. Give them the $10 anyway, you know. If you're going to go help feed the homeless, or you're going to do something for the homeless people, just do it. Don't talk about it, just do it. And the only way I would, you know, actually advertise something along those lines, like I said, is if bringing attention to it is actually going to help that cause, which is what's being done in this cause. Bring attention to it, bring it to the consciousness of the masses, and it'll help. But just as far as everyday helping people, you don't have to say anything. So I think and this is just my opinion, I think when you go through a spiritual awakening, if you don't seek enlightenment, which is study, you're never going to get to this point, which is spiritual enlightenment. And I don't think that comes easily. The ego is going to fight you every step of the way in a spiritual awakening. No matter how amazing you eventually come to realize it is, you know, it is. But I went through a lot of hell to get to it, you know, and I thought I was going nuts. That's all I can say, is I thought I was going nuts. Moving on here. Get into some of the signs that I had when I was going through the spiritual awakening. And in the signs were directly related to things I was doing or not doing in my life And as you can see, this is an eagle. It's a sign of strength. You know, it's something to give me hope. And this was something, a dark sign. I took this as a dark sign when I found this dead bird. I started studying on animal totems and things of that nature. And there was times before I had to do something, I was afraid, and I was getting signs like this. So I started taking these pictures. I've got way more. Doves. You know, these are what I would call animal totems, giving me signs based on what I'm doing in my life or not doing. And I was starting to, through pattern recognition, see this stuff, right? Those are blackbirds, kind of just looking at me all judgingly, right? And was that guilt on mine? Was that guilt or some kind of, you know, that I had? I don't know, but I started seeing these different signs. You know, right there, bird torn apart. It was a blackbird torn apart, and I found it on the hood of my car. You could see my phone. I took a picture of it. So this is when I started recording the different things that I had going on. And I'm gonna put this into more context in later episodes. But I figured I'd throw a little bit of this out there. Then all of a sudden, I had something come into my life, and it was a cat that kind of adopted me. And for me, the cat helped me live in the moment. It was purring. It would help you live in the moment. I'd feed it and it stayed outside. I think the cat was what was doing this to these blackbirds. But the ancient Egyptians, there's reasons why they kind of really revered cats, is because, you know, if dogs protect us in the physical domain, they believed that cats protected us in the spiritual domain. And with some of the stuff I've seen, I'm open to anything. I'm open to that maybe being true. But there was definitely natural law at work. And I passed up a slide. How do I go back? It's not letting me go back. Okay, I passed up a slide. It was kind of quick, and it was basically tarot, the Eight of Pentacles, the Tower, which is a big card, the King of Swords, and an actual reading that I had. I'll probably put that up on the next, because I'm not going to start this all over just for that part. And I'm not doing any of these. None of these presentations I do are going to be done live. Even though this seems like it is, I want to be able to edit them, and I want to be able to. There's a tech curve here. I'm doing this on my own. I'll give them, you know, the disclaimer. I am in my own basement. I'm not in my mom's basement. But so here's the requirements for us to get what we want under natural law. Humans say that they want certain conditions to be present for both themselves and their species as a whole, such as happiness, health, peace, freedom, prosperity, etc. However, specific requirements exist in order for human beings to obtain those conditions. If the requirements for obtaining those conditions are not met, those conditions do not just manifest automatically by magical means. Okay, and I said it earlier. Can what God do when he created this universe, does it seem magical? Sure it is. But the natural laws he created that we all have to abide by are science. It's alchemy, it's science. So we talked about the word occult earlier, and I wanted to get into what the occult actually is. And I'm going to direct you guys to somebody who knows a lot more about it than I do, and some people are probably going to recognize these slides. But occult knowledge, the word occult is derived from the Latin adjective occultus, meaning hidden, which comes from the Latin verb occultare, to hide, to conceal, to keep secret, hidden knowledge. Occult knowledge, the knowledge of natural law and its operations, constitutes the most deeply occulted information on earth, which the powers that be seek to keep hidden from the people of the earth at all costs, because its understanding would level the playing field and put an end to the current entrenched systems of control. So I told you I'm a recovering order follower. Well, the powers that be, I'm going to be writing another book. I'm not trying to sell books on here. I'm terrible. I have not even marketed my last book. It's on Amazon. I'm terrible at marketing and advertising. But my next book is going to be very appropriately titled Rise from Darkness. Who are they? Well, I can tell you who they are. They are dark occultists. They're Satanists. And the order givers, the decision makers, the lawmakers, the order givers, have an acute understanding of this occulted knowledge. They know how to get around the karmatic effects of natural law. The order takers, the order followers, who are doing these terrible things, and then it's just, hey man, don't get on me, I was just following orders. they're the ones who are going to reap what is sown from those misdeeds. It's that simple, man. It's that simple. So people say who's more culpable, who's guiltier, the order follower or the order giver? So people want to say, the order giver's smarter. Well, yeah, they're smarter because they're using occulted knowledge to get around natural law, to not be affected by the negative consequences of it when they tell the order follower to do what they do. And I was going to put some pictures of all the Jews that were slaughtered by German order followers. I could throw up a million things about police brutality. We've seen them all. We've seen them all. And there's a reason why I decided to do this earlier. I wasn't prepared for this. I'm going to be honest. I wasn't prepared. I didn't get to do this and how I wanted to do it. But I seen something on Facebook. I seen some news that I didn't like. And I was stationed at the U.S. Naval Academy. And here we go. There's satanic studies are going to be allowed at the U.S. Naval Academy. Washington. Midshipmen at the U.S. Naval Academy who have beliefs associated with the Satanic Temple now have a study group available to them, according to the military institution. A space for a study group at the Academy, located in Annapolis, Maryland, was requested by students with beliefs aligned with those practiced by the Satanic Temple, so they can gather and share their beliefs, according to a statement. They're allowing Satanism to be taught at the Naval Academy, and some of the things I was seeing written about it blew my mind. Oh, you might as well let them because it's it's just another religion. It's just it's Christianity. It's just they're I'm going to tell a quick story right here. I had a friend who told me one time, and this guy was just the most narcissistic, evil guy that I had known, and he didn't come across that way at first. And he admitted to me, yeah, I was a Satanist. I was a Satanist, and I was an atheist. And then he said, I'm still an atheist, but I'm like, well, man, if you were, and this was me being, I'll be honest, this was me being completely retarded. Well, if you're a Satanist, you're just really a Christian. You're just a bad one, because Satan is the devil, and that's just that's the fallen angel Lucifer. And no, that's not who Satanists are. They don't worship Lucifer. They worship themselves. And there's a lot of information that you can find on this at What on Earth is Happening. I'm going to put a link up at the end of the slide presentation about that. He's been doing this for 12 years, Mark Passer. He knows a lot more than I do. But some of the things I was seeing people writing about this is not something that's good. Our future military leaders, we need to have, our country's where it's at right now. We're not going to automatically be able to get it into this utopian, anarchist type of country just like that. It's not going to happen. So we got a military in place to protect us, right? And that military needs to have, for the time being, strong moral leaders who are not going to follow immoral orders to come take our guns or take an American city or to do something like that. And I think having Satanists and having these different cults being taught at military academies for our future military leaders in this country, and some of the shit I was reading, we have become so desensitized. And I'm going to talk about sensitization and desensitization that they do in Black Ops. But we've become so desensitized to evil that we accept it. We just shake our heads, okay, whatever. And it's gotten real bad in the last 4 years. We take these lies and we're like, okay, whatever. We're so used to it. We've gotten, there's so many memes on Facebook. Listen, nihilists, you're doing nothing for us. Go ahead and not care about nothing. Be nihilistic. I seen this, and this is what made me really want to put this information out there, is we should not have any type of satanic things going on being taught at our military academies. It's ridiculous. This isn't just part of, some religious study to know thy enemy. Satanists, from what I know, are involved in euthogenics. They're involved with all kinds of evil initiatives that do not benefit humanity or the United States. This is ridiculous. So I seen this and I was like, I got to do something about this. I was stationed there. I took an oath to swear to protect my country from enemies, both foreign and domestic. That oath doesn't have an expiration date, and I can't interpret that oath, and I'm not going to follow. We had strong moral leaders, and it was kind of hypothesized about 15, 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I was talking with a bunch of guys, and it was pretty much a consensus that literally 2/3 of the United States Marine Corps would not follow a moral order, an immoral order to take an American city. And we had strong moral leaders like General Mattis. And some of our police departments have guys like Sheriff Clark. These are strong moral leaders who aren't going to take immoral orders. But the system shouldn't be in place to begin with. I get that. But having this go on, this is ridiculous, man. This is really going down the dark path. This is headed to the dark side. And they're putting it's like they don't care. They'll lie. They put evil up in front of us. And then I hear, you know, some of my friends were talking about and that's why I'm getting out here and doing this. And I do get a little frustrated about it. Some of it's not funny. Yeah, they're like, you know, if you don't vote, you don't have a right to complain. You know, and sometimes you got to choose the lesser of two evils. And I'm like, no, you know what? When presented with two fucking evils, I ain't got to choose either of them. And I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to partake in this system. I'm not going to vote, and I will complain. That's still my First Amendment right, isn't it? You know, I will complain. I'm not going to take part in that system. You know, and I'm probably kind of dating myself here, but I don't know if anyone remembers from a long time ago on MTV, they had this like thing called Rock the Vote. Rock the Vote. I'm going to have this thing called Rock the Don't Vote. I'm not voting. There's nothing to vote for. There's the system in place right now. It's a satanic system to the point where they're even telling us what they're doing here. This is fucking crazy, man. This is fucking insane. This is what made me come do this show. And you know, this is what made me come do this show and decide to go ahead and put this out here. None of my shows, like I said, are going to be done live for a while. I wish to have no connection with any ship that does not sail fast, for I do intend to go in harm's way. John Paul Jones. Now, I've been free and clear of stuff, like I'm retired, and doing this is something that's going to probably put me back in harm's way to some degree. But, you know, you got patriots who did this stuff, true patriots who did this during the Revolutionary War for our, you know, fucking freedom. And I got to, you know, do this. I got to be a crypt keeper. I got to guard this. You know, at the time, I didn't realize how special it was. But I got to stand guard here. And this place that I absolutely love is now allowing satanic, you know, practices. And maybe they always did. I don't know. Maybe they always did. But now they feel comfortable enough just to tell everybody about it. No, this assaults all my fucking sensibilities. It assaults all my sensibilities. It's ridiculous. Okay, so a couple months ago, I went to Philadelphia, and I went to an event there, and I'm going to give a grade on that event next on my next presentation. But man, this was awesome. And yes, I did run up those steps. Those are the steps from Rocky 1 and 2, and I was just amazed at the energy of that city. You know, I arrived at the event and I stayed for about an hour and a half after I arrived, but then I needed to get out in the city and see some things. And the energy here, there had to be like 5,000 people here this day. And I don't think too many other city halls have this, but it's funny that over 43 years later, the story of Rocky, it still resonates with the human spirit, because it's a story of the human spirit, and it's a story about taking hits and still moving forward. And it's a story about willpower. And I thought it was synchronicities. It had a real synchronistic feeling to me, especially when I was in the city for me to go here and see this. And then while I was there, of course, I had to see the Liberty Bell. You know, it's Philadelphia. I'm 6 hours away, 6.5 hours away, and I've never been there. And I went and seen the Liberty Bell, which I thought was awesome. I mean, that's where liberty was born. And I went to Tun's Tavern, you know, where a bunch of drunk sailors, probably under John Paul Jones, decided to make you know, form a fighting team of people to defend our democracy. And the Marine Corps birthday is actually tomorrow. And is it tomorrow? Yeah, the Marine Corps birthday is tomorrow. And I just hope that the Marine Corps can keep good moral leaders in there that aren't going to take immoral orders. And when I seen that at the Naval Academy, that just blew my mind. It really did. So real quick, I'm going to go over this right here. This is I've been talking about it this whole presentation. Natural law's working definition. It's universal, non-man-made, binding, and immutable conditions that govern the consequences of behavior. Natural law is a body of universal spiritual laws which act as the governing dynamics of consciousness. Okay, people, you know, natural law has nothing to do with nature. Natural law has everything to do with the consequences of higher sentient beings' actions. Okay, this is the big part. Non-man-made. It's made by God. God created natural law, like gravity and like everything else. And it is spiritual laws of true spirituality. And like I said, I got friends in the Christian beliefs. I got a couple of them. They're very pious and scholarly in their study, but they follow Christianity through a lens of working natural law. And I think as long as people within certain religious practices have a spiritual practice within the religion of following natural law, I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem with what religion actually is, though, and that's not going to be popular. I'll probably lose some friends over this, but it is what it is. Evidence and proof and truth is simple, and it speaks for itself. We've had wars going on. We've got Islam and Christian fighting each other for centuries, killing each other over whose version of God is right. We've got Christians. We had Protestant in Irish. We had Protestants and Catholics killing each other over the same Christian beliefs. It's ridiculous. And this is why so many people are moving away from organized religion, to the detriment, I think, to the detriment of mankind. If you study a religious practice, if you start looking at all the different religions and all the different mythoses, the Norse mythology, Greek mythology, start getting into alien possibilities, which make more sense to me. And I'm not like a scientism person, but the Anunnaki, that makes more sense to me. The Lost Book of Inkel is one of the ones I'm reading now. I read Chariot of the Gods. Start studying these different things. It all comes together, man. It'll coincide together into a truth for you. Okay, this is from the Declaration of Independence. So this was written in 1776, and I'm going to just go ahead and read it. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among those rights are the pursuit of liberty and the pursuit of happiness. To secure those rights, governments were instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. I'm not calling for no action. I'm not calling for no violence, but I don't think use of force should ever be taken off the table. But there's going to come a time, if we don't unscrew this or unfuck this, okay, there's going to come a time where people are going to withdraw their consent. And part of this, I think part of this is to prevent that. We don't want that. We had a civil war already, man. And the way I see the country going, I could stay asleep and I could be like, hey, I know natural law, I'm good. I don't have to pass on what I know. Now that's bullshit. I have to. I've only known about this since March. I've known about it a lot longer than March. Through pattern recognition, I knew what natural law was. I was experiencing it. Now there's some enlightenment, and there's been some education and training on what it is. And as I pass it on and teach it, I plan on getting better and better and better at it. Just like every other concept in my life. When you teach, you learn twice. So as I pass this on, I'm going to continue to learn. I'm going to continue to speak about it until I'm too old to do so. It's really that simple. And I'm going to talk about other things on this channel besides natural law, but I'm probably going to tie it all back in. If I'm talking about something self-defense related, if I'm talking about something, tactical pistol related, if I'm talking about rifle stuff or empty hand self-defense, I'm going to put it all back into natural law. I'm going to teach ethical self-defense, because there is a point where you need to stop. When you've defeated this person, you need to stop. I'm going to talk about all that stuff. You don't keep going. You got to have self-control. And it's hard when you're that geeked up on adrenaline, but you got to have self-control. Once you've defeated them, you don't keep going. And from a legal standpoint also, you're going to be facing a lot of things if you kill somebody and you could have restrained yourself from doing so. So, I call it ethical self-defense. Okay, it's ethical use of force. I'm going to go over some of that stuff also. Let's see where we're at here. Okay, so what is a right? I thought this was very important to put into this first presentation because it falls right into what natural law is. And I did this before. I did this not too long ago around a bonfire. I asked one of my students, so what is a right? And he was like, anything legal that I have a right to legally do is a right. And I was like, that's what a right is? A right's not an adjective, man. It's not a noun. A right is a verb. And I'll probably say this a couple times. A right is any action that does not bring harm to another human being. I'm going to repeat this. It is any action that does not bring harm to another human being in some way. And if we go back to the 7 transgressions against natural law, those all bring harm of some kind to another human being ultimately through theft. And that's important to remember that, especially if you're going to watch my next presentation, which is connected to this one. It's all the same presentation. I don't know how long I've been. I probably need to speed things up here. Oh, wow, hour and 20 minutes. Wow. Okay, I did not mean to be that long. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much in this. I'm doing this on the fly. That's how I always speak. I didn't really have a good lesson plan set up with this, but you know, I'm going to get better as I go.
You must not give up. You must finish what you started.
Why?
Because you're right. Yeah, look. Your ancestors called it magic, and you call it science. Well, I come from a place where you must not give up. You must finish what you must not give up. You must finish what you started.
Why?
Because you're right.
Messed that up twice.
Your ancestors called it magic, and you call it science. Well, I come from a place where they're one and the same thing. You must not give up.
I think this is a good
finish what you started.
Why?
Because you're right.
a good indication to this.
Yeah, look.
It kind of puts it together a little bit. Plus, I'm into Norse mythology a little bit. You think with a name like Asgard Tactical Solutions. So go over and check out whatonearthishappening.com. You know, on my Facebook page, I've had a Facebook page, public one, with my real name and everything for 3 years now. I've got nearly 3,000 followers. I'm going to put the link to this up there. My hope is even if a third of them decide to start actually following What on Earth is Happening, or following my work also, and getting into this, that's 1,000 people. And we're not going to do this one person at a time. We need to do it in bigger chunks, right? So I've got like nearly 3,000 followers on my self-protection page for my other book, but I named it after me, Dan Arnold. You can find it. Just go on Facebook and type in Dan Arnold, you'll see. And I post different memes and different things up there. But I got nearly 3,000 followers. And this right here, whatonearthishappening.com, Mark Pastor's been doing this work for 12 years. I never even knew about this guy until March, but I just want to say that he helped motivate me and gave me, I'm not a fan, but I do admire you, which is why I came out to do this. And sometimes you need that. And if this is what you were looking for, I'm hoping you get more, and I'm hoping that this is okay. But I got to put this out there. And I also want to talk about the intro and outro music, because the intro and outro music comes from a group called To the Ancients. And they're new at this Norse folk-like, music, and they did the intro and outro music. And I thought it was fitting, since I was going to be talking about ancient Hermetic principles and the teachings of the Hermeticists and their knowledge of natural law. And here, this group, to the Ancients, it's a 2-person group, and she just got a beautiful voice. This is an awesome group. His instrumental is excellent. So if you get a chance to, man, I really appreciate them letting me use their music for this. I emailed them and got permission. And just like a lot of the slides on here, people are going to recognize it. They're from Mark Passio slides. He gave a bunch of people permission to use them, and I didn't use them exactly as his slides. I threw them onto this, but they're his. A lot of that stuff was his. And I hope I did a little bit of justice. My next presentation is going to be specifically about anarchy and what it isn't and what it is, and the whole show is going to be about that. And I'm going to give a grade on an event that I went to. I went to this event in September called Anarchadelphia. It was in Philadelphia. And put on by the State of Anarchy, and it was a well done event. I'm going to give a full report and grade on what I think about it. I figured it'd be a good time to do that before the year's up. And I'll just see you guys. See you guys next week. Peace out.